Episode 54.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2. Just kidding.
I don't think we need to put people through that again. Maybe. Should we?
Maybe in the future.
Can make it a series.
I know people just got excited.
I know. They're like waiting for the music to kick in. I'm sorry. We don't have another song for today. But we will.
But we have been brainstorming for the next one.
If there's a next one, we have something
ideas
in store.
When there is a next one.
Yeah. Takes time. That took like an hour at least. And it was kind of spur of the moment. So it was an hour that I didn't necessarily have like planned for my day.
Yeah, I think that was replaced the PM workout for that day.
I think you're right, actually, which is good. Like my throat definitely hurt more from the singing than it would from a workout. So there must be something to that. But we're back. Took a bit of a break there after the new year. Had some equipment issues and then went on a little ski getaway. I don't know what to call it. A weekend away?
Yeah.
Up to BC, Kicking Horse. Very advanced mountain. It's a mountain, in fact, where over 50% of the runs are advanced runs, black or double black, which, needless to say, it's my mountain. It's my place. It's the place for me.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you get off the top, the chairlift at the top, that Stairway to Heaven lift, and you take the right to go like down the cat track, and there's that sign that says advanced only with like black and double black. I'm like, damn right.
No, every time you go by, you're like, oh.
Just like it is the sketchiest cat track. It's not the cat track that you're thinking. It's steep, it's narrow, there's like lots of exposure and consequence on one side. It's bumpy.
And you have people ripping down.
Yeah, you have people who use the cat track as like their own personal, like, I don't know, stunt area.
When we went to Kicking Horse for the first time ever last year, it was in February, and my mom was like, we're thinking of a trip to Kicking Horse. We would stay like these days on the mountain. And first thing Meredith does is looks up the trail map, and it's just like a spider web of like black. And I'm pretty sure she was like, there
is no bottom.
Can I ski here?
It's all
my response. Yeah, you'll be fine.
It's all bowls. I found this one trail map, and if you Google Kicking Horse map or Kicking Horse trail map, you'll find it, and it has it. So essentially you see the 5 bowls that funnel into the bottom, and there's like one that's labeled only the most extreme, big deal, don't whip out, leg burn, steeps, which is that's where we stay. Mm-hmm. That's over on Skiers Left. Yeah, and at the bottom is labeled juice boxes, which is true. It's a fun mountain.
Anyways, we had skied on Thursday, and then we head out again on Saturday, this past Saturday. And we had to kind of ski down. There's like it's basically flat from where you park to the gondola line. And I pop my skis on and I ski down, and it's like typical, like skiing with Meredith is just a day of waiting for her to figure out how to get her gloves or her like pole straps clicked into her poles, waiting for her to figure out what boot buckle she needs to do up, waiting for her to make sure that her pants are over her boots, waiting for her to tap the snow off the bottom of her boots, waiting for her to put her skis together to get them on her shoulder. It's really just painful. It tests my patience to the greatest degree. So anyways, I'm waiting as per usual at the bottom of the lodge where the gondola line is. And sometimes I have to wait for her to get her new pass because she's lost her pass. Sometimes I have to wait for her to walk down the stairs in ski boots because she's so slow. Okay, but anyways, I'm waiting for her, and it's like 2 minutes. Like the track probably takes 20 seconds. So I'm like, even it takes her a minute longer to put her skis on, which is typical. It wouldn't take her that long to get down to me. So she shows up probably like 2 or 3 minutes later, and there's like snow all over her helmet. And she's like, my ski popped off. I fell.
Well, it did. I was like, I put my skis on, and then I look at you, and I'm like, well, Alex doesn't have her buckles done up on her boot. I'm not going to do my buckles up on my boots. So I like put my skis on. I don't even have my like helmet like buckled or tightened. I think right at I like just happened to pull my goggles down. And so I'm skiing, and I'm looking down at my boots, and I'm like, I don't really know if I like skiing with my buckles undone. I feel kind of loose. And it was like right as I thought that, my binding just like ejected my boot. And I was like, I wasn't going very fast, so I had a lot of time to be like, what the fuck? And just like shoulder into the ground. I think I like laid there for a second because there were people that were skiing by me, and I was just like, damn it. So I stand back up. Fortunately, in the crash, my boots buckled themselves, so I didn't have to do that. Click my ski back on, get to the bottom, and I'm like, yes, I crashed on the ski end. That happened.
So I'm like, hey, let's go to the bathroom. Like, takes forever to get down the stairs. Finally
I don't take that long.
So
You're making me sound like I'm really not that slow.
Okay, I guess it's all relative. I'm waiting in the bathroom. She's like a few steps behind me because I don't like walking that slow, so I usually walk ahead of her, and she'll catch up eventually. Because I'm just like that.
Yeah.
A good girlfriend. So I'm like kind of waiting for her to like turn the corner to go into the stalls, and all of a sudden I just see there's like a half wall that kind of like separates like the hallway to the entrance of the bathroom, and I just see her complete like wily, what is it, like a road runner or coyote, basically just like legs flying underneath, and then all of a sudden just like goes down. It's like, what the fuck?
God damn it. This is not a good way to start the day.
Took all of my willpower not to pretend that I didn't know her. And be like, are you okay?
So I noticed that you've fallen, and I feel somewhat obligated to check on you before I start laughing at you, which I think is what happened there. It was like not a good morning for me.
No, it wasn't.
It's because I have race boots.
No, it's not.
It's good they don't have any grip on the bottom. I've been so careful to not do that because that's some fear that I have. And then I think I was just so flustered about like crashing on the ski in that I was being reckless. And I paid the price for that. What can I say? Yeah, I went full yard sale in the bathroom. You were the only one in there, thankfully.
Thankfully.
It was embarrassing. It would have been embarrassing all by myself. I embarrassed myself. But the day improved after that, I think.
It did. Yeah, Meredith's funny because she's completely decked out in all the latest gear.
As, like, you should be.
Right. Buys new skis every few months because she thinks that's going to make the difference.
I don't buy new skis every few months.
But she did get new boots. And the funny thing about these boots is if you're familiar at all with skiing, you know, like the Lang race boots are just, that blue. It's like a very royal blue, very easy to point out. There's like fluorescent orange on the buckles. But what's weird about Lang is they make like a softer boot, the same, that they're not necessarily race boots, but they make them the color of the race boot.
They're for like junior skiers. They're for like
Meredith has basically what look like full on race boots.
Yes. That's me. I didn't get them because they're race boots. I got them because they fit the best, and they happen to be that obnoxious blue color. I would have been perfectly happy, in fact, happier with black boots.
I know. It's just it's a funny scene.
A scene? I'm a scene now? Did you just describe me as a scene?
There's like moments on the ski hill where you got your like ski stuck, and it's so hard for me. It sometimes slips out where I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, we determined that you were like kind of an asshole as a kid. Like when you were skiing as a kid, you just had absolutely no patience for anyone at all ever?
No.
What? Huge
Like the people
surprise.
who just take forever to walk around in ski boots, like walking downstairs. It's like,
You were probably, as a like 9-year-old kid, like, come on, just like move.
I was.
I hate those kids.
I think I was that kid too who would like push their skis in between, like from behind, like in the lift line in between people's skis to like get farther in.
That sounds like you.
Yeah.
I would have tripped you.
We used to get our passes pulled like racers because we were skiing too fast in slow zones and
Yeah.
like cutting people off and stuff.
Yep.
Still do that.
This surprises me 0%. Why don't they take your pass now? Because you paid for it?
I don't know, because we ski at Kicking Horse and not at like Nikiska.
That's
not
true.
as many people.
It's true. Not as many gorbs.
I haven't had any close calls this year.
Well, it's because we haven't been to Sunshine and had to deal with snowboarders yet.
Yeah, that's true.
No offense if you're a snowboarder, but some offense. Look behind you.
Yeah.
Jesus. It's like with snowboarding, you have, like, you're going down the mountain and there's like you have literally a 180-degree blind spot. And it would behoove you to be aware of that, or snowboarders to be aware of that. But they're not. They'll just like come across like a run with skiers skiing right at them, completely oblivious. I hate it. Anyways, I don't want to go on a snowboarder rant, but it's just too easy to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Anywho, a lot has happened since we were last on here. Lollapalooza just wrapped up, which was a kind of a shit show. I didn't realize they didn't have a podium ceremony, but I guess that makes sense because it went so late because of the weather. And it's kind of funny to me. This is not what we're going to talk about, but I will talk about it. A couple years ago when we did it, we were on Team of 3. The weather was really bad on the final day like it was this year. And there's no rain plan. There's no indoor venue. The whole thing is outdoor. It's like outside or bust. I don't know what they would do if it just rained the entire day. Guess they would cancel the final day. But anyways, what they did to ensure that the elite division got all their events in was they canceled like scaled and intermediate and masters. They just slashed like all of these divisions, and people got really upset, rightfully so, because you know, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of money to get down there and compete. And even if you're competing in the intermediate division or scaled or whatever, like that for a lot of people is the only competition or the only big one that they will do for the year. It's like people's regionals, and they do have to qualify to do it. It's not just like sign up and do it. And I found that a little bit distasteful back then. And then, you know, it happened again this year and people are upset, but it's like, you know, I know that a lot of people were around 3 years ago when it happened, and it's like, you know, that they haven't changed their protocols. So I don't know. It's just kind of a bummer. It's like, I would almost rather they have less divisions, like fewer divisions, and at least allow them all to run. Like maybe cut one of the elite events. Like, do you really need the final event? No.
Yeah, that's a tough question, because I think most people who are there spectating are there to watch the elites.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's more money on the line for the elites.
Yes.
So it is important to make sure that you're like allowing for the number of events that you've planned for and promised. Whereas like intermediate and elite, like I guess it is a big deal, but if you, and I'm speaking not from experience because I've never been in intermediate or like scaled, I know how much it means to those people. It means just as much to them, if not more to them than like an elite athlete, because most of the time they've had to take time off work. They're paying out of pocket. They haven't been to Wodapalooza before, but there isn't any money on the line. And they do, like, when you sign up for intermediate and elite, you need to understand that there's like, you are kind of second tier in terms of like the way that the organizers see you, which is unfortunate, but it is hard when like people are in an uproar about their events getting canceled. I understand, I'm sympathetic to that, but at the same time, like, I don't necessarily disagree.
Yeah, I guess it may be just some sort of qualifier when people sign up, like, hey, FYI, in the event of inclement weather, like your division is subject to like truncation or something like that.
Yeah.
Just like there's a possibility that you will not do all of your events in the event, of whatever.
I was actually pretty surprised they did the elite, the last event.
I was too, because I assumed that there was some sort of like noise or some ordinance out there that would have prevented them from going that late, but maybe they decided to do it instead of have the podium ceremony, and
yeah,
it went really late though.
Probably it was, I think, fairly important for at least the women to have that final event because it was closer in points, so makes more sense.
Anyways, we didn't really watch a ton of it. We watched some because we had some people competing. Shout out to Paige Semenza, who did quite well. But I do like it. You're seeing some different faces, which is cool. Like, it's nice to not see the same people up at I mean, you saw like a major shakeup on both the men's and the women's with people who were in the top 3, top 5, which is exciting. Some people have been around a long time. Like, obviously, Amy McQuaid has been competing for some time. So it's kind of nice to see her.
Yeah. I think you look at the list and you're like, oh, like, Katrin's not competing. Tia's not competing. Annie isn't competing. Like, who's even competing? And it's like, oh, Bethany, she's probably going to win because she's the most like well known and like has come like at the top, I think 5 in the games before.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's nice to see. I mean, the girl who was winning she's from Australia, right? For a while there.
Yeah. Ellie Turner.
I was like, I don't know who she is.
Yeah.
It was definitely nice to see a shakeup and see some new faces, and probably like a surprise to a lot of people.
Yep.
But
yeah, it'll be interesting to watch the season play out. And I read that Tia's bobsled team got their official invitation or whatever to the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
So good for her. Yeah, and then the other big thing that happened, and kind of will be the main talking point for this podcast, is Dave Castro was fired from CrossFit organization, CrossFit HQ. And man, that really started a shitstorm, hey?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people asked us about it and our thoughts. We have some. I mean, I think the amount of information we have on the topic is somewhat limited. I'm sure more will come to fruition as days go by.
Yeah.
Potentially. I don't know.
Well, I think like what we do know is the way that it came out, which is, there's probably some truth to what Dave put out, which is Eric Raza being the sort of professional that he is, like regardless of the exact situation and circumstances, said like maybe we make this look mutual, kind of go the high road here, so it doesn't really shake the boat. And obviously that's not what Dave wanted to do, and he went public with it before CrossFit was able to announce anything publicly. And I guess like Dave is the old CrossFit, and I think that
he's also still a big part of the new CrossFit.
Yeah, and so I don't think this is Dave going away. I have obviously the way that I wish that it would have happened is a little bit different than the way that it did happen, but again, I don't know the entire situation.
Here's my take.
Okay. I
know Dave Castro on a somewhat personal level, at least a professional level. I guess it's a mix because I was on the demo team for 2 years, 2017 and 2019. So I'm in, like, you hang out with Dave for basically a week, and then we've both been up to the ranch on an occasion for a week. I was in Carlsbad prior to the 2017 games to spend time with Dave testing workouts. So I've spent a fair amount of time with Dave, and then I also know him just like through seeing him at regionals, and then when I competed at the games, and then of course just like being a part of CrossFit for the last like 10 years. I like Dave. I think like and we've said this before, I think there's this like perception of him being an asshole, and maybe, I don't know if he tries to be like that on the games, like associated with CrossFit. He likes to have a certain persona. I don't think that's actually reflective of his personality. Like, he's a really caring, like interesting, smart individual. He's not an asshole in person. He can be blunt, but not in an asshole kind of way. He's doing his job, and he takes it seriously. He also cares a lot about the athletes and about CrossFit, but at the same time, like, he is a big personality, and he has grown up with the sport. And Eric Rose is coming in to take the sport in a new direction, which is the direction away from like what Greg has created. And I think people kind of want CrossFit to just be the same as it always has, with a non-bigot leader.
Yeah.
Problem is, and this is from what I see on social media, is Dave is still associating, or had associated himself with Greg Glassman. And that's the only post that I've seen. He also associates himself with Sivan, who is also very old school CrossFit and politically motivated, or not politically motivated, but is
divisive
and extreme. And CrossFit's kind of been like that. And I think it's difficult. Eric has probably is trying to get away from that and try to create more of like, and again, this is partially speculation, trying to create a more professional environment and get away from that. And it's probably difficult when Dave is still holding on to the past. And again, speculation, but that's also based on what I've seen on social media. From an athlete's perspective, I think that this is potentially a good thing for the fairness of the sport, because it takes it out of one person's hands and puts it into more of like a structured organizational thing, where you've got maybe some more checks and balances, less favoritism, more like maybe they're hiring some different people who are a little bit more like adept in creating like a fair sport. It might help get better sponsors, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am personally sad to see like that Dave won't be a part of it, because I do like him, and he does add like a very strong like entertainment value.
Yeah, and he's
a personality.
That's the conflict, and like because we do know Dave on a personal level. Yeah, and like one of the things that I remember most about Dave, aside from, just the way he is, when you interact with him one-on-one, is like he is like a curious person, and he does really like learning and reading and gaining perspective. And I remember when we were there, it was either testing workouts at the ranch, or when we were actually in Madison for a demo in 2019, he asked us about our experience as a couple and about our experience as being gay, and some of the things that he just didn't know about. And I could tell he was kind of uncomfortable asking the questions that he was asking, but I think he just really wanted to know what our perspective was in life, just in life, not in life as an athlete, not, necessarily not like business owners, just in life. What is it like? What is the dynamic? Like, what are some of the things that you guys go through on a daily basis? And
he said we were his first gay friends.
Yeah. Which isn't a huge surprise. Like, he's from a small town in California. He was in the Navy SEALs, like just not not necessarily in many communities where he would have exposure to, gay or queer people. And, I know what it takes to ask those questions when you're not, you don't have a level of familiarity. And like, I appreciated that. And I appreciated that he wanted to learn and know us in that way. So yeah, I really like Dave. I have also, I guess, I have the background in the corporate world, and have been through rounds of layoffs myself. I wasn't laid off, but I've been in an organization when there were layoffs, and it can kind of shake you up. And a lot of the times when new leadership comes into an organization, for example, when I was working in and around maybe 2014 or so, our CEO, we had a new CEO come in, and the entire leadership team changed. Like, there wasn't opportunity for the old leadership to stay on. The whole organization just turned over. And I think that is extremely common, especially when new senior leadership comes in and they do want to change the corporate values and the culture, and they want to move in a different direction. And so that's obviously not what happened with CrossFit and with Eric Rosa. And I think part of that is because he understood and understands what Dave brings to the table from a leadership standpoint, from a sports standpoint, from a fan standpoint. But at the same time, I can appreciate how difficult it would be to have someone underneath you who, like, you have a difficult time managing, or who you don't feel is necessarily on board with your vision or the direction you want to go. And no matter how hard you try and you want to include that person, if it isn't going to work, it isn't going to work. And it's better to kind of cut ties and allow everyone to move on. And I guess what I wish had happened, and again, I don't have enough information to know if this was even possible, but I guess I wish it had been handled with a little bit more grace, kind of understanding that no matter what, Dave is not leaving the competitive CrossFit scene. Like, he's just going to kind of go into a different space and fill a different role.
Most likely.
Just because of his affiliations with Rogue and athletes, and like, it's what he does. So I guess I saw an opportunity maybe to remain like a leader in the community and remain like fixed to the sport, just in a different role. But I can also appreciate how painful it might be to be fired from a job that you really enjoy doing. And so, yeah, I guess it's like you said, I think it probably from a business standpoint and future of the sport standpoint is a good thing. It's just kind of maybe a painful and uncomfortable way to get there.
Yeah. I mean, he essentially, like, if you think about it, like, created the CrossFit Games.
Yeah. And he created them in a time, I guess when you think about CrossFit as a whole, and so like early CrossFit and the CrossFit Games are kind of one. And then maybe around 2016, they started to split off into the CrossFit Games and then, CrossFit.com and kind of the different initiatives and lobbying that Greg was doing. But the whole thing was kind of came to be because of, Greg's and the entire organization's tendency to be combative and to be aggressive and to pick fights with, established organizations and companies and, the NSCA, like Big Pharma, Coca-Cola, like all of this stuff. And it really worked, I think, to get the company and the sport off the ground, because it attracted a lot of attention really quickly. But it's like at some point you can stop doing that. You don't need to do it, because it's not only has the company and the mission of HQ been legitimized somewhat, but the sport has become more legitimate. So we can stop playing games necessarily. Yeah. And that was the way Greg was. That was the way Dave was. Like, just would kind of get into it with anyone, anytime. Like, you can't say anything bad about CrossFit. Like, you can't say it doesn't work. You can't, like.
Yeah. It's, I think, and then also to point out, like, there's, like, Dave was involved in all the, he was in charge of, like, seminars and seminar staff and scheduling and stuff. Like, he was pretty involved.
Well, that was up until 2020 when he went full time with
Yeah.
the sport.
I guess like thinking back, it was only recently, and I was kind of just annoyed by this whole thing. And maybe this kind of was, maybe it's worth mentioning pointing out because it could have had an impact. And is an example of what I'm talking about in terms of like professionalizing the organization and the sport. It was maybe like a month ago where I think James Fitzgerald was on a podcast and he said that CrossFit wasn't individualized.
Yeah.
And then there was a big hullabaloo about like all these CrossFit people being like, CrossFit is individualized, like you can scale. And there's, I guess, valid arguments on both sides. I really don't care enough about the programming aspect to have an opinion. What I do have an opinion about was how it was handled by the director of sport, which was pretty dang petty on his Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like all these like little podcasts, and it's just nothing is like, they're not solid in their mission. They have to pick like small fights with these other companies and like other people who are personalities in the sport of fitness or functional fitness or whatever,
Yeah.
or who have been a part of it. Like, it just doesn't, it's petty. It's like if someone says something about CrossFit, just let them say it. Like,
Yeah, like you don't have to prove anything anymore. Like it's been proven.
but it seems like silly almost. I'm like, you guys are huge, or at least, you're trying to, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess the non-response by Eric and by CrossFit immediately I respected, because it was kind of typical behavior, I think, from a Greg era member of.
A response to what? This?
A response to, Dave's initial post about the firing. Like,
Eric. We're talking about that now.
We are. I'm sorry. I went
Okay.
backwards. But I saw that as a massive step forward for the organization, who has historically gotten into it with people who, say negative things. And I thought that was, certainly Eric could have done that. CrossFit could have released a statement immediately saying, this isn't true, this, that's not true. But they didn't, because it's like, at some point you have to rise above the fray. And I think many times Greg and Dave had an opportunity to rise. Like, you're going to bicker about something that James Fitzgerald said on Savant's podcast about a comment that like doesn't matter and was taken out of context anyways. You're not even arguing about individualization. You're arguing about the definition of individualization, which is so silly. It's so silly. It's so like pointless. So I guess that's like, when I think about the progression here, I think that's, that's the positive. But I think people got so upset, and that's kind of what, like, that's what interests me, is the outrage and the backlash on social media. And it was immediate, and it was nasty. And I think that I've talked about this before on a different medium. But there are a lot of things that are kind of, for lack of a better analogy, replacing religion in our society. People tie their identities to what they do, the organizations that they're behind, the people in those organizations. And I think CrossFit specifically has sort of embedded itself into people's identities, and like to a point where it just becomes salient, and it becomes such a core part of who you are. And I guess this is not new. There's like a concept called the self-identity theory, and it sort of proposes that social identity and the way that you conceptualize yourself are based on your participation and membership in different social groups. So things like sports teams, like religion is in there, nationalities, occupation, sexual orientation, ethnic groups. And that can change depending on the situation. Like, you might not feel like you're a particularly patriotic person, but, when the Olympics rolls around and you see someone standing on the podium with a maple leaf flag over their heads, you probably feel strongly like, I am a Canadian, in the same way that when there's stars and stripes hanging up there. I think strong, even though I have lots of problems with the US, I think I am an American and I feel proud for that. And it's part of my identity. But I think that, you know, when you start to develop these in-group and out-group kind of biases, this us versus them kind of mentality, which is CrossFit's bread and butter and has been for years. When someone says something or challenges, the belief system of the organization in which you have involved yourself, it's difficult to take a step back and say they're criticizing the organization and not me. Instead, it's easy to interpret that as a criticism on yourself. And so then instead of asking questions or trying to understand, you get defensive. And that's kind of what I saw. And, with CrossFit specifically, the organization has become so central to people's concept that emotions just run really high. And beyond CrossFit, they attach themselves to people within CrossFit. So specifically in this case, Dave, because he is the most well-known, he is the face of CrossFit and he has been for years. And so you can't consider CrossFit without Dave. So when something happens to Dave, something is happening to CrossFit, and that's how you self-conceptualize. So it feels like something is happening to you, and it's very disruptive and it's upsetting. And it's difficult to manage those emotions. But it's no different than, the coach of a sports team getting fired. It's no different than, your manager at work getting fired. It's no different than, if you're a religious person, the pastor at your church getting, retiring or whatever. It shakes you up. The way that I kind of think that this differs is in the lack of consequence. So when I think about what has happened with Dave, I immediately go to layoffs and firings at a corporation that is not so dissimilar from CrossFit. I mean, it's bigger and more professional in that. My manager was laid off one time and it upset me. And, but I can't go on a rampage at work and start yelling at the new leadership saying you're an idiot. You don't know what you're doing. This, and this. Why? Because the consequences are too high. Because as soon as I decide to do that, guess who's the next one out the door?
You.
Me.
Yeah.
And so the internet provides this veil of security because there are no consequences on the internet. Beyond, if you're a big name in the sport or whatever, there are obviously some consequences to having strong opinions, but not really. It's not really going to affect the opportunity that you have moving forward. And certainly if you're a nobody, a member at an affiliate who just loves Dave or loves the gun-toting part of CrossFit, the uber conservative, I can do whatever I want, screw the establishment. If you identify with that and you feel like Eric Roza is taking that away, you can feel all kinds of ways. Then you can go on the internet and run your mouth off with absolutely no consequence whatsoever. None. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, I think to go a little bit, I think the word loyalty needs to be thrown in there. There's some weird thing where people feel like there's they need to be loyal to Dave.
Well, I think it's because of what Dave represents. And this is, we can go down a lot of different rabbit holes here, but Dave does what he wants to do. He's a gun guy. He lives in on a ranch in California. He does his thing. I don't know what Dave's political affiliations are. I could guess, but he represents a certain way of life to people who feel like that way of life is threatened with the way that the US is going.
Yeah, it's definitely there is a lot of parallels to the way that you're describing what maybe has happened in CrossFit the last couple of weeks to what happened when Trump was not reelected.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, when Trump wasn't elected, people just went crazy.
Yeah.
And they, just like Trump, Dave still has like a voice.
Yep.
And he can sit there and say like, Eric was wrong to fire me. Like he thinks that, he's trying to say it's mutual and it's not. Like the same thing with Trump to say like, oh, like this was unfair. Like I, still fight for me. And like, look at all these people who are still believe that I'm the winner and that, what I have to say is the way the things should be. And all of these things. And then also the lack of like consequences. Like you can get on social media and just like talk and say anything and there's no consequence. And I mean, it got to the point where like there were rallies and stuff and like people were tearing down buildings and like a lot of them just walked away because, you're part of a mass of people. And I guess like, I'm not saying like, I'm just kind of stating where I see like a parallel. And I don't think it's obviously not as extreme, but there is like a loyalty. And I think you're right. It extends to the way people live their lives and what their values are and what people stand for. Like Dave stands for CrossFit. He also stands for other things, and CrossFit also stands for other things and has in the past. And I think Eric is trying to move away from that. Like they are trying to be a little bit more like, not even conservative in terms of like, not politically conservative, like just conservative period. Like not politically driven, not having hard stances on things, like just quiet and like running a sport and a sports organization.
Yeah.
And like affiliates, like even within affiliates, like I don't walk into very many businesses where I see like, I mean, yeah, you see like pride flags and stuff like that now, but you don't see in like most businesses, although I'm not living in the US.
Yeah.
But I'll say, at least from my client's perspective, they don't walk into a lot of businesses and they're like, I feel uncomfortable here because I see like the blue line.
Yeah.
Whereas like you hear a lot more about that in CrossFit gyms.
Yeah.
You see on social media a lot more CrossFit gyms like voicing their opinions on lockdowns and like government stuff. Whereas like you don't see that from a lot of other businesses.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I'll admit it could be because I just follow more CrossFit gyms and I'm just in that world that I think it's happening more. But I don't think I'm alone in that. Like,
I mean, the only thing I can even think that would be remotely similar would be like bars.
Yeah.
You know how some bars are like there's
and
obviously,
maybe in different areas of the world. But.
Yeah. But that's a good point. I think that, I was listening to this podcast the other day and it was talking about just the way that people are with their belief systems. And if you want to like sort of check someone's intelligence and their ability to progress forward as a thinker, like check in on what their beliefs are now versus 2 or 3 years ago on something that demands a dynamic thought approach. And if they're the exact same, like a good example is the like coronavirus thing. If someone's beliefs are the exact same as they were 2 years ago, that's a problem. And that goes for people who are hypersensitive to it and for people who are, on the COVID is a made up, it's a hoax. Like really, like the one of the markers for an intellectually competent person and the way that corporations should run is like strong convictions loosely held, which is you can have strong beliefs, and CrossFit will always have like strong core beliefs that drive decisions, but it doesn't mean that they're held so strongly that you're going to go and the leadership is going to go to war every time that new evidence comes up or that they're shaken or that they're asked to think in a different way. Or they're asked to think out of the box, which has historically been how CrossFit is operated. And I believe that Eric Rosa is trying to move in that direction, which is a company that has strong values, has strong beliefs, employs people that share those values and beliefs, but are also open-minded and diverse and willing to move in a new direction, like operate for the good of everyone, versus just you continue to fight the same fights that they've been fighting for years.
There were a lot of people, to go back to the Dave thing, who posted on social media, like we did one, and it was just like Dave was cool to get to know, and like we'll be sorry to see him go. Like just kind of like he cared a lot about the games and brought a lot to CrossFit. And like a lot of people kind of posted on his, like in the comments on his post, like thanks for a great career, like you'll be missed, like just like nice things to say, kind of like farewells, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Michelle Latondra posted, and she had a really good post. She basically just said like, wow, this termination is a shock. That her thoughts on this change are simply that it's a change. And while it's although like a significant blow, the CrossFit Games community and CrossFit will be okay and will flourish once again. People's passion lie in CrossFit and what it has done for many, and this will not die so long as we continue to love our sport and training methodology. And I guess like I really like this take because it kind of like it kind of like took the pressure off of like, yeah, the us versus them, Dave versus Eric. Like Eric is a bad person, Eric is an idiot. Like we're loyal to Dave. Dave means this. Like, but what really it is it's like it's what the value there and what we need to recognize is like CrossFit is still there. And like it's going to change, of course, but like does that mean that we need to be in an uproar? No. Like if we kind of like stay loyal to CrossFit and like see it for what it's brought us as a community or as an organization, then like we can kind of roll with the punches and like stay strong together.
Yeah.
But I think her thing was much needed because her stance, you go on like you were saying you follow Eric Rosa and like he posted a video or a picture of him in the snow with his kid and people were just like commenting like you're a effing idiot and like how, you know, just like attacking him.
Yeah.
On his like and I don't think Eric really uses his personal page like kind of Dave uses his page for CrossFit. It's like he knows he's being looked at because he's the new CEO and he's under a microscope, but at the same time like is it really necessary to be like doing that? I don't necessarily think so. Like he's trying to do the best for this new he's doing his best. He's in charge. He has a vision. Like if you don't want to be a part of it, leave.
Like here's what you can do. And it's going to work way better than like commenting on someone's Instagram post. Take your money and take your actions and go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And if you're actually that upset and you actually care that much, sit down, author a letter, like actually write an email and send it to Eric.
I think people think that what Eric did was morally wrong, but they don't know, like you said, they're not in touch with what goes on in a corporation. And that's what CrossFit is.
And you're not in the room. Like you have no idea what it's like to actually work with Dave.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like maybe it's actually maybe it's terrible. Like you have no idea what led to that decision. You know 2% of what actually happened. And it's like I get that people can be upset like based on what we just discussed, but at the same time, like don't be an asshole about it.
I will point out one last thing on this to kind of just bring some more information to light. On a YouTube video, like the day or two after Dave's firing, Savon,
who is like turned into a major opportunist.
Yeah.
Just with what he talks about.
Basically gets on there, and I didn't even listen to the whole thing because I honestly don't really pay any attention to him anymore. It's fine if you do. I personally don't spend my time listening to what he has to say. But this was sent to me, and he basically said that Eric, like recently Eric had posted, I don't remember where it was, but he basically said, I have been a little bit MIA lately because I've just been dealing with some personal stuff, some mental health issues. I think he may have said like depression, but yeah. I've got a handle on it and I'm just taking it seriously and taking some time to get back. Which there has been a push to like talk about mental illness and like make that a conversation, which is, it's the way society is moving.
Yeah. And it's a good thing.
It takes probably even for him a lot of courage to come out and say that. And Savon gets on there and says, how can Eric Rosa be making these types of decisions when he's mentally...
He just announced that he's mentally disabled. Like, those are actually the words that came out of Savon's mouth. And it's like, if you actually believe that, like, you're far more simple than I thought you were. And B, like, I don't think you actually believe that. I think you're just saying that to be an asshole. And the whole, like the reason why people continue to struggle with being open and about their mental health struggles is because of people like Savan. Because you come out and you say, I'm struggling with mental health, I battle depression. And someone like Savan is going to turn that around and say, you're mentally disabled. Like, there's a difference between a mental disability and a mental illness.
Yeah, it's just not right, and it's immature, and it's not professional. And on top of that, like, Dave associates himself with Savan.
Well, and like
still,
Savan has
and that
this
is
huge
a problem
like
for
portion
me.
of the community that's just like gravitating towards him because he represents like old CrossFit, and we're going to be assholes about everything. We're going to make fun of fat people. We're going to say it's their fault. Like, you're choosing to kill yourself with carbs. Like, Eric Rosa is mentally disabled.
She's
and
very extreme and very insensitive.
Yeah, but that's how they have gotten attention from day one.
Yeah, people latch onto that, and that's fine. But when, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just part of the way that society is functioning now.
Yeah.
But those are our thoughts and our opinions.
The thing that I try to remember is I do think that people like Savan and people who associate themselves with him and who think that he's like great are probably the vocal minority. I think that the reality is more people are probably somewhere in the middle. You know, they don't know exactly what to think. They're like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But, you know, I guess I'll still go to CrossFit class at my affiliate because I care about the owner of my affiliate and my gym community. And that's going to go on no matter who is running the CrossFit Games and no matter what Savan says on his dumb podcast. Like nothing changes for the way people experience CrossFit in their day-to-day lives. And it's important to remember that if you're someone who like did get really upset over Dave, if you are worried, like think about the people that you go in and see every day in the gym. Think about the owners of your gym. Think about your community. Like if we learn nothing from 2020, it's that even if you remove the name CrossFit from your gym, nothing changes. The community remains the same. The people remain the same. Everything that is important remains the same, no matter what, no matter who's in charge, no matter what decisions are being made, no matter who's making open announcements or designing CrossFit Games workouts. And that is what you have to remember going forward. Yep. And then just have faith. Like change is not a bad thing. Like most of the great things that have happened with CrossFit, you know, or life in general, this world, have come from changes that were probably a little bit uncomfortable at first. And we've been watching Ted Lasso, which I would highly recommend to anyone, especially if you're, you know, feeling kind of dark. It's a great show. But he goes on, you know, the episode we watched last night, he quoted Walt Whitman, and he said, be curious, not judgmental. And he's talking specifically about how he's been judged in the past and people make assumptions about him and they belittle him and they bully him. And, you know, it's because they weren't curious enough to ask questions about him. And I think that is a problem that we have as a society, and it's someone's fault. Like the human mind is it's a meaning making machine. It is designed to make connections. And when it doesn't have all of the information, it is either going to interpolate or extrapolate information to make things make sense. And what that means is that we're all judgmental all the time. We are always closing the gaps. We are always making up the parts of stories that we don't know. It's the reason why you get so mad when someone cuts you off in traffic. You don't know what's going on with that person, but you make up the part where they're an asshole. You know, because it satisfies
someone cuts you off on the ski hill.
Yeah. Some dumb snowboarder.
Somebody's, or me.
You don't know that they're actually blind in one eye.
Or blind altogether.
But that's the thing, is you don't know. But you have, like, in order for it to make sense to your brain, you make up the rest of the story. You make up the part you don't know. And so instead of being like going into a situation and going into this change with any amount of curiosity about what can possibly come next, and if it can be a good thing or a positive thing, you go into it thinking, nah, it's not going to be as good because it's not Dave. It's not old CrossFit. I don't like the new CrossFit. I don't like Eric Rosa. You don't know anything about him. You don't know what he's trying to do. You don't know what Dave was back there doing. Like all you know is the version of the story that you're telling yourself, and you're letting yourself get mad and fired up and riled up and pissed off over something that probably isn't even real.
Okay. I listen to Women in Songs playlist, and no, I'm going somewhere good with this, so pay attention. And it's not that it's a great playlist and you should listen to it.
It's not.
You just reminded me of a song. It's called Everybody's Got a Story by Amanda Marshall.
Don't know who that is or that song.
Okay, you've heard it. But basically, it's like one of the lyrics, I'll just read it because I don't assume everything on the surface is what you see, because that classmate just lost her mother and that taxi driver's got a PhD. And it's like people probably get in a cab and they're like, this person doesn't have an education, like they're an idiot, but you don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't know like what somebody's going through at the supermarket.
Yeah, like you don't have none of us have the right. I mean, this is moving from a situation perspective to a personal perspective, but you don't have a right to look at someone and think you know anything at all about them. You have no right. And when you realize, or when you take a step back and you start, you can understand, you can give yourself a little perspective on situations like this one and just say, hey, like, I probably don't know.
Do you know it yet?
No, but I hate it already.
Okay, fine. Not the right time.
But anyways, when you realize you don't actually know that much about the situation, it becomes a little bit easier to detach your emotions from what you think is going on.
I remember when they moved the games from Carson to Madison, and people were like, how dare you? They were pissed. It's like, I remember people saying like, how is anything going to match the tennis stadium? It's not going to be as good. Like, you're not going to have Friday night, Friday and Saturday night at the tennis stadium. You're not going to have, the soccer stadium. Like, it's not in California. And it was fine. People still bought tickets. People still like loved Madison. I specifically remember in Madison, like the first year, because I was on the demo team, like the environment was very similar to the tennis stadium, and you weren't like baking in the sun all day.
I almost died in a tennis stadium.
I got like 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah.
Not 3rd degree, but they were not good on my legs. Remember you couldn't even sit on those dang seats? They were so hot.
I think I realized quickly why they don't play tennis there in the summertime. Like,
yeah.
It's like...
It was a good change, though.
It was.
And but I specifically remember people being quite upset about it and sad, and they're going to miss it. And rather than being optimistic about what Madison has to offer.
Yeah.
And honestly, Madison is better because you're not like driving to and from the venue for 45 minutes in traffic if you're staying at the beach.
Yeah.
And it's easier on the athletes. So
I remember we got an Airbnb in Carson in 2016, and the Airbnb was actually not in Carson. It was like on the border between Carson and Compton. And it was an experience. But yeah, it's I mean, CrossFit, I think back when they announced like the Open was going to be a thing, people lost their minds over that. Like, oh, the sport's never going to be the same, blah, blah, blah. And like, it's different. Sure. The Open was that was a pretty major shift. Madison's different. Like, the Coliseum is very different from the tennis stadium. It's not different in a bad way. It's just different. Mm-hmm. Just different. Like, and the new leadership is going to be just different.
Yeah, the way you qualify for the games is different. And if you don't like it as an athlete, if you don't like it as a spectator, like, don't do it. I mean, like, part of it was just my time to leave the sport. Part of it was like, I just was not interested in the way that the sport was shifting for me as an athlete. It didn't serve me like as an athlete. Like, it didn't like mesh with the way that how well I do in online competitions versus in person, and just like having to travel and stuff and go to all these different events. And so I was like, you know what? That's fine. I'm just not going to do it. But
Yeah.
like some people, it's just like, man, I will say there is a difference between standing up for like what's right, like the Black Lives Matter movement, when some of the athletes stood up and, you know, had opinions and had voices, or when, you know, Greg Glassman, and that was kind of tied in, had his opinion, and these athletes, you know, kind of spoke up. There's a difference between that and a difference between what Eric Rosa did. And not that the athletes are the ones saying anything, but just generally the community.
Yeah, I think you're seeing more of a outcry from certain parts of the community over this. Probably the same parts of the community who were quite quiet.
Yeah, I'm just saying that speaking we're not saying you should never speak up for what you believe in. It's just there are certain things that probably don't necessarily need as much aggression or push.
Yeah, and it goes back to like why?
Because a CEO has made a decision about the way management is going to be in a corporation that has nothing to like. That's just not the same as. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the question, the why question, is pretty important to ask. I think people's understanding of why they're upset is somewhat flawed. Yeah, I guess that's kind of it for this one. How do we want to wrap it up? I'm still really interested in what's going to happen this season. We're kind of watching it from a distance, obviously not participating, but I heard, like, and obviously there's been a lot of threats made, not threats, I don't know. Yeah, I guess threats to, you know, people not going to sign up for the Open or boycott or this or that. So I'm actually quite interested to see if that, if that occurs, if people actually do revolt. You know, because at the end of the day, what does that actually accomplish? Like, yeah, you save your $20 or whatever, but, you know, are you not participating at your affiliate? What impact is that having on your local gym and your community and the people who you are with every day? Like I said, those people are not going anywhere. You know, if it builds the community to do the Open, do the Open.
I think a lot of people, and I do this too, they behave based on it's like the principle of it. Like you'll say, Alex, why are you doing that? And I'm like, it's the principle of it. It's the principle.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the principle.
And maybe, but really the principle is just shooting yourself in the foot a lot of the time. It's like out of principle, you're not going to compete in the Open, but the Open is really fun and you love the Open and it's a way to be part of the community. So really like not doing the Open out of principle is really just like, and yeah, what are you accomplishing besides like, yeah, you're standing up for something, but is it actually going to like do anything? Like there's things you stand up for, like I mentioned, but like this is just not, it doesn't fall into that.
Yeah. No one cares if you do the Open or don't do the Open.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I guess that's it. If you messaged us a few weeks ago asking our thoughts, there you have it. There are our thoughts. We like Dave. I think he's a great person and a very valuable asset to the community. I also think that this might be the right change. I don't actually know, you know, what specifically led to it. I can speculate like a lot of other people can, and there's no point in doing that. But I'm going into what happens next with a healthy amount of curiosity and, as always, a lot of hope.
Yeah. And if you're looking for a playlist, you know where to go.
Women in Songs. Go ahead if you can make it through the whole thing.
Okay.
I think my favorite is they always open with the same Jewel song. The playlist goes on, and it's Jewel. What is it? What is the song?
I don't know what the name of the song is. I'm going to have to look. Meredith said the other day, I noticed that whenever you put it on, the same song comes on first. And I said, no, I select that song to come on first.
Is it Foolish Games? It is Foolish Games.
Just let it play. She has a great voice. It's very unique.
You took your coat off, stood in the rain.
Okay, fading out. If that doesn't get you pumped up for a workout, I don't know what will.
Got me pumped
I
up for a
don't know
nap.
what will.
Did you know she's from Alaska?
I didn't.
Well, there you go. She's also married to a cowboy. Ty.
How do you know this?
I don't know.
That's weird.
I don't know.
Especially when you're so negative about her song.
I like Jewel. I just don't like Jewel in my workouts. But I have a memory for things that are completely irrelevant, and that's what I know.
Okay. Listen to it. It's Best of Women in Songs on Spotify.
Ty Murray.
Okay. Well,
That's the name of the
anyways,
cowboy.
that was a good closing out. We're a little bit more of a positive spin on a more serious topic for today.
Everything's gonna be okay. It always is. Until next time, thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things you normally do. We appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you again soon.